Hey everybody, Brian Bauman from Bauman's Farm and Garden, and as you can see, look at these massive petunia hanging baskets. To grow, we've had a lot of questions about people trying to pick out, well, how do I grow my own? How do I pick out which plants to put together? How many plants do I put together? How do I know that the plants that I pick out are not going to overgrow, take over each other, all work nice together? So I wanted today to kind of put together a series of videos that are going to help you pick out the perfect plants to grow your own giant, massive petunia hanging basket. So follow me and we're going to go pick out some plants to create these beauties. Trick number one in picking the perfect petunias for a massive hanging basket is understanding that there is a difference between petunias that are grown from seed and petunias that are grown from vegetative cuttings. Seed's pretty easy to understand. It's a lot of flowers produce a seed, they put the seeds in the ground, it pops up. Each one of those is going to be a little different, but the seed petunias never grow as big as the vegetative ones. The seed petunias also, when a flower blooms, it gets pollinated and it produces a seed. And that seed pocket, once it's formed and the plants produce the seed, the plant thinks it's done. I don't have to do anymore. My job in life is complete, and it stops. So it doesn't just keep going and going and going into a really big hanging basket. Plants that are grown, so this is bee's knees, one of my favorite yellow petunias. This plant is only grown from a vegetative cutting. And what I mean from that is this is all that we get to get started. They have a mother plant that they keep stock on. It's a giant plant. They're taking little piece of it off, and they're all genetically identical, right? And the reason that they have to give me this little start is because it doesn't actually produce seed. It's sterile. So that means a couple good things. One, it thinks it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing and producing more flowers, so it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And two, you don't have to deadhead it. The reason that you are deadheading a flower like a fuchsia and some seed varieties is that you're removing those seed pods so that that flower thinks that it needs to keep growing. With a vegetative sterile petunia, you don't have to do any of that. It might look a little better to take some of the dead flowers off, but this beauty is just going to keep growing and growing and growing and flowering, whether you take off more blossoms or not. But there's more to think about just than seed versus vegetative. Let me show you what I mean. The second tip or trick is to try and find petunias that are all in the same series. So what I mean by that is in the plant world, there's a lot of different companies that are growing starts of plants. Proven Winners is one of them. I talk about them a lot because I like their plants. And let's take Proven Winners first. So Proven Winners has series of supertunias. All of their supertunias are trailing. All of their supertunias are vegetative. They're going to keep blooming nonstop all summer. You don't have to deadhead them. But not all supertunias are created equal. What I have in front of me here, these are all Supertunia Vista. Vista Bubblegum is kind of the flagship. And they have named them all Supertunia Vistas because Vista is the series, and all the ones that are named Vista are all going to have similar growth habits. So that way you know when you are putting Vista Supertunias together, they're all going to grow in a semi-close habit so that not one of them is going to overtake the other. Vista Bubblegum is by far the largest, fastest growing Supertunia on the market, and if you pair this with another variety, a lot of times you won't even find the other variety because this one grows over the top of it. But by concentrating on just Supertunia Vistas, even though I think this is a good example, this is Supertunia Vista Silverberry. This is like the next planting. I planted this a couple weeks after I planted this one. And you would think, finding the two of these on the bench together, that this one's going to be so much more vigorous than this one. Not exactly. Vista Silverberry is super vigorous, but this is just a little further along. It will catch up. It's going to do fine in a combination together. It's a really nice white petunia with like a pink throat, but there's more in the series. This is Supertunia Vista Paradise, and Proven Winners annual of the year is Supertunia Jazzberry. You could plant all of these together in a hanging basket. They're all going to play nice, and you're going to end up with that giant ball of color. Within proven winners, they also have just regular Super Petunias, Super Petunia Royal Velvet, Super Petunia Royal Magenta. Those ones are gonna play nice together. I don't oftentimes plant them with the Super Petunia Vistas because they just can't keep up with the Super Petunia Vistas. So by looking at the name and the series, you can really get an idea. And I wanna show you a couple other series, and I think you'll start to understand the difference between them. Okay, here's another completely different collection or series of trailing petunias. This is from a company called Ball, and they have a series. This is their jeweled collection. This is Sapphire, which is brand new this year. You can see it's a fully double ruffled petunia. It's so pretty with that white picotee edge and the dark blue flowers. I mentioned earlier that you don't have to deadhead these, and you don't. Deadheading this petunia is not going to make it bloom anymore. But a lot of times when you end up with these really big, fully double flowers, when they're done blooming, they just kind of form a brown mat on the plant. And a lot of times I'll go through and pull those off just so cosmetically it looks a little better, but it's not going to help it bloom anymore. This is Sapphire. That's new this year. Midnight Gold is this beauty right here. Check out that kind of gold edging around the outside of the dark flower. Really pretty. This one came out, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. And the third one in the series, this is Pink Diamond. Another really pretty, all of them are doubles. All of them grow similar together. It's easy to kind of combine them together. They're not very vigorous. If you had put these with one of the Super Petunia Vistas, you would never see it in a hanging basket combination. But I think these are so pretty. They're just different, right? And each one has their own way of shining. But there's a lot more. We're just getting started. All right, here's another series. And this one I've talked about a little bit already this year. This is Arizona Sky. This is a brand new petunia for this year, and I am in love. I love this color. It's just a beautiful plant. And it's in a series called Cascadias. There are multiple different Cascadias. Arizona Sky just happens to be the new one this year. And here's another one. This has long been a staple favorite of mine. This is Autumn Mystery. It's a great name because the color changes throughout the season. When it is cool and cloudy like it is right now in Oregon, the color is much deeper, more purple. And then as we get longer days, warmer nights, more heat, lower humidity, the color really brightens, almost to this kind of mauve color with like a deeper throat to it. Really pretty, and as the seasons are changing, you kind of get all of those different flower shades from one plant. And you can see it a little bit on the Arizona Sky as well, but both of these are in the Cascadia series, and both of them are gonna grow and play super nice together in a hanging basket, and I think the color combination is really pretty and unique. Just another one. Here's another example. I grabbed one of these planters. These are Itzies, and it's funny. Where we are in Oregon, we're in the Willamette Valley, which is really close to the coast. We're about an hour from the coast. Going to central eastern Oregon, it's about a 2 or 3 hour drive. And I had these ladies come by the other day. They drove 2 or 3 hours because they know that Bauman Farms has Itzy petunias. You won't find these a lot, but I love them. And you can see in this planter, like, they just do so well together. Itzy Magenta was the first one that came out 2 or 3 years ago, and it just forms this giant ball of flowers that go nonstop. It is vigorous, but one of the things like series, Itzy Magenta goes straight across the pot and down. I do it in window boxes, I do it in planters. You can see in general it's very flat. But like when we started with the Vista Super Petunias, they go big. They are big balls of color. So comparing those two together, they would never work. But in this planter, I have Itzy Magenta. Itzy Pink is brand new this year. The two of them work so well together by putting a thriller. We have some Dracaenas in the center. This is gonna bloom nonstop all summer long and be absolutely gorgeous. There's a lot of other series out there. We really spend a lot of time picking and choosing through the series to find the best ones that work really well for us. If you have questions, if you have a series that you really like, place it down in the comments. We're happy to kind of go back and forth and figure out the best ones that are gonna work for you, which ones we have available on the farm, and we're always happy to answer questions. So making sure you get a vegetative petunia, making sure they're all gonna play nice by working within a series. But there's one more step that I think is really critically important to growing a giant petunia basket. Let me show you what I mean. Walking through our retail, you can see there are so many more petunias. There's so much more to go through. Jessica and me are going to be working on videos kind of throughout the next couple of weeks, going over calibrachoas, fillers, all the information that you need to really kind of put everything together. But while we're here, I couldn't help but talk to you about, this is my favorite red petunia. This is Surfinia, which is a whole nother series, Surfinia Deep Red. This to me is the ultimate true red, not an orangey red, not a pinky red, it is red. And it works really well with a lot of different plants, but keep this in the back of your mind, it's my favorite red. However, last tip, I gotta get going because I know my mom is gonna be watching pretty soon and she's gonna be like, Brian, get back to work. But last tip, don't forget this when making those giant, massive petunia baskets. You need to fertilize it. These plants are bred to bloom and bred to grow, and they need a lot of nutrients in order to get that big. So I always recommend whenever you're starting with a new planting, whether it's in a pot, container, in the ground, or in a hanging basket, Biotone is essential to mix in with your potting soil. It's all organic, it has these mycorrhizae in it. That's the bacteria and stuff that really helps the roots get in, get started, get growing, so that they have the structure behind them in order to soak up enough water and enough nutrients to make those giant, big hanging baskets. Start here. Then the next step, this is important. So I'm just a farm kid that grew up on a farm, that probably knows more than he should about plants, but not all the technical stuff. So I'm gonna try and explain this as best I can. When talking about fertilizers, there's 3 numbers on all the bags. And a lot of times what you find if people start buying for hanging baskets is bloom boosting fertilizer, because you think you need these giant blooms. And that's the middle number on the 3 numbers. And so a lot of times it'll be like a 5, 15, 5. Do not buy that. That is not going to help with these giant petunia baskets. These flowers are bred to bloom. They don't need any help in that department. The first number is the nitrogen. That's going to really help with the foliage, keep it nice and green, and you get a lot more bang for your buck out of that. The last number focuses more on the roots. And if you are really focusing on the foliage and the roots, you're gonna end up with a giant hanging basket. A lot of times at the farm, to get things started, we'll use like a 15-0-15. So sometimes that's hard to find, which is why we've kind of packaged some of our fertilizers up. This is a 20-20-20. It's just a well-balanced fertilizer. The reason I like it is because it works really well on your hanging baskets. It'll work really well on your houseplants. It works really well on a lot of different things that you need a water-soluble fertilizer for. It's 1 tablespoon of this per gallon of water. I do this at my house every single Sunday. Every week, these plants need fertilizer. And if they're looking a little yellow or not getting as big, I bump it up to 2 or 3 times a week. The other thing that I also think is important is that you don't fertilize every single day. A lot of times the plants don't use everything that's in here. So if you're fertilizing with the same amount every day, a lot of times the salts and the other things that are in there that it's not using build up in your hanging basket and become toxic. So it's important when you fertilize one day, the next day, don't fertilize. Just use regular water and flush it out. That gets you started new every time, and you're going to end up with those big, giant, beautiful hanging baskets. Like I said, Jessica and me are going to be working overtime the next couple weeks, bringing you tips and tricks on how to put all these different plants together to create your own perfect hanging basket. So subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow along, because we got a lot more to go through.